Welcome to the Movies and Attracted Men podcast.
Attractive men.
Attractive.
Whoa.
That's attractive.
That's attractive.
He looks like he knows movies.
Hey, he knows
100
movies.
before 10.
100 before 10.
Okay, so we are ranking and reviewing the Mad Max movies. There's 5 Mad Max movies. Because a new one came out, Furiosa, a Mad Max saga.
It's pronounced Furiosa.
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 No. So, Ben, what is today's date?
Today is the 8th of June.
Okay, and when did Furiosa Mad Max Saga come out?
Way too long ago, Chad.
May 24th. So there is a reason that we're late on this one. It's because Ben could not see those movies in time.
Yeah, I definitely could. I saw Furiosa twice before Chad saw it once.
He saw it the second time with me yesterday for the first time. It took me a while to get through these. This isn't super my thing. It's hard to put it on time they're a little longer, and
it's very different from the Planet of the Apes saga because Planet of the Apes, every single movie was good.
Yeah.
This one, it was, top heavy and bottom heavy. There was not really an in-between movie.
Yeah.
At least for me, but I think that I can speak for you too.
Sure. Do you want to go first? Do you want to give your number 5?
I'll give my number 5. My number 5
Yep.
is Tina Turner's masterpiece, Mad Max 3. Mad Max 3.
Mad Max 3.
That's my number 5. I thought it was very wonky. I thought it started good, but then for whatever reason they added the kids. I don't know why they needed a kids society. It just didn't make sense to the movie. You're talking about a gladiator type, feel. Gladiator type start. You're like, oh, this is the ring. This is what's going to happen. And all of a sudden, Max is just like, oh, he gets cast away. Even after he fulfills what he promised.
Yeah.
Doesn't make any sense. Tina Turner's like, cast him away. And he's going to wind up with a bunch of kids. The kids think he's someone completely different.
Yeah, it's like a god.
Kids are stupid. Tina Turner, stupid. They added a little person who's the smartest person in the movie. But he's still stupid. The movie was all over the place. It didn't make too much sense to me. It jumped around too much. That's why I have it at 5. I still enjoyed parts of it. I thought that the cage scene was really cool. It was a cool fight scene. But it just didn't make sense. The whole movie just didn't.
It's a silly one.
It's very.
I'll
silly.
talk about that when we get to it. But I have it higher than you do. But there's definitely we'll talk there's some silly shit in that movie.
Very silly.
For me, in 5, I have the original Mad Max. It was hard for me to get into. It was it's very 70s movie. It's very clearly a 70s movie. I can appreciate a lot of the stunts that happen, like when the car smashes through the sign like that. Yeah. But I could feel like the score every time any music played, it pulled me right out of the movie. A lot of the acting, again, very 70s, very Julie Carey, very what else are we gonna do here? Like that kind of thing was going on. And it had moments. It did have a few really strong moments. The ones that come to mind are, in particular, when the guy is upside down in the car and is looking at the gang starting to take power and realizes they're about to blow his ass the fuck up. That's a pretty chilling moment. There's a moment where these two moments kind of go together, so they're kind of one, but when the guy is running away from the gang and the gang is chasing him down, like, what are you doing, bro? What are you doing? And I thought, this probably isn't that big of a deal because they're all really chilling, and then they grab him. And then they're sliding him over the road, dragged by a motorcycle. Like, whoa, what the hell? And that always that kind of scene always gets to me. Not that that's a bad thing, but it always kind of strikes a chord with me. It reminds me of Guardians 2.
Yeah.
Because there's a scene in Guardians 2 that's all. Again, it's meant to be crushing and kind of scary. Is when the crew is laughing and dragging the guy along and please save me, and they lock him in a room and then send him out to space, and they're all laughing and having a great time. It's really chilling to me, and that of course leads into the next part of the scene where the guy and the girl are running away in the car, and the biker gang is pulling up on them, and there's a moment of realization where it's they're gonna break my car down. I'm not going to get away. They're probably going to kill me, and there's not a goddamn thing I can do about it.
Yep.
And then you see it happen just like that. That's really chilling. But even like, it's in last place because for a 90-minute movie, it still feels too long. A lot of the story is like shockingly, like painfully predictable, as in like, why does his wife even go anywhere by herself anymore? um it honestly, it feels like two different movies, because we have the first movie where like we're battling the street gang. We kill the Knight Rider, and then we battle the street gang, and then he's like, oh, I'm going off on myself and having a little vacation with my wife now. And then she gets wrecked. And the other thing that bothers me about Mad Max 1 is that it doesn't really have an ending, and the main plotline doesn't get resolved. The main plotline is like, this guy is evil, he's a leader of the gang, he's kind of weird and wacky, but we want to see him get his comeuppance and die, typical action movie. And then we don't even really get a showdown. Max kind of scares him off, he runs away. And we get a kind of cool scene where he's got the guy in front of the burning truck.
Yeah.
That's very Saw. It looks like it inspired Saw, probably, because it came out before, where he locks the guy ankle onto the truck and says, won't get through the steel, but you can cut through your foot if you want to. But yeah, I would, if of all these movies, if I had to rewatch one, this would probably be some on the list I wouldn't want to watch.
For me, I had the original Mad Max ahead of 3, but at 4. And there's a lot of problems with the original Mad Max. But the reason that I had it ahead of 3 is just the second half. I mean, the second half, for one, you got to realize $250,000 was their budget. Which today, like, it sounds like a lot of money, but you're like, hey, back in the day, the money's not different. It's about $2 million a day.
Yeah.
With $2 million for a movie today is nothing.
Yeah.
And
the original Saw that we were talking about cost $1 million, and it looked like garbage.
Yeah. So
like, this looks, comparatively, this actually probably looks better.
Mm-hmm. The fact that they had like some legendary stunts. This movie also launched Mel Gibson's career. And I mean, wasn't a good movie, but the second half of the movie had classic scenes. I mean, even the opening scene was pretty cool, but they just took a long time to get into what they were trying to get into. And then when you literally like, oh, this is why they called it Mad Max, because they killed my kid, pretty much killed my wife. This is why it's called Mad Max. And it's just some of the coolest action when you look back. And I mean, it's this movie, 1970s movie, and the action, it's really cool. I had it above 3 just because it was not really too, like, it was predictable. But I would rather a movie be predictable than it to not make sense. That's just me. Mad Max 3 just didn't make any sense to me. That's the ultimate reason. There was cooler scenes. I think there's a lot more cooler scenes in Mad Max 3 than there were in Mad Max. But I think the cooler scenes in Mad Max were that much better than the scenes in Mad Max 3, I think that when you go to like, oh, it's about to be post-apocalyptic in Mad Max, and you still have those scenes where the entire tone of the movie is, hey, we're already in apocalyptic, a different world than we were years and years ago. It just, like, when you have like car chase scenes, they kind of launched they kind of shaped movies with car chase scenes. Mad Max just did that, That's why I have that ahead of 3, but they were both not good movies.
Yeah.
I can agree with that.
The first Mad Max is also the only one that's not really part of, you don't really feel the apocalypse or like the wasteland. I have some issues with that, but we'll get to that later. But the rest of the movies kind of fit into that like end of the world. There's nothing in any direction, kind of thing. And this first Mad Max kind of feels like honestly a pretty generic cop movie that you've seen a million times.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
It was just, for me, I'd rather it not, or I'd rather it make sense and be predictable, if there's good action, than to not make sense. Not at all be predictable. Yeah, let me just predict that you're just going to have a Children of the Corn.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
It just
didn't see that coming, did you?
But yeah, no, I didn't particularly like both movies as a whole, but I had to put Mad Max ahead of Mad Max 3.
Yeah. In fourth place for this, looking at everyone else's opinions on this, I'm learning this is a pretty hot take, but in fourth place for me, I have Mad Max 2: The
It's a
Road
very
Warrior.
hot take. It's crazy.
So first of all, as a movie,
Not
it's
even a hot
clearly
take, it's a shitty take.
it's clearly much. Right, fine, fuck you. As a movie, it's clearly much stronger as a full story than the first Mad Max. I appreciate that we have it doesn't feel like two different movies. It feels like we're going from one place to another. We've got an arc for Max now. We've clearly got a much bigger budget and a much clearer story of what we want to do. Like, Max is finding these people who are locked in this kind of standoff, in this quasi siege, and they kind of win him over and dig him out. But and I like that. Listen, I'll keep giving this movie praise because I said a lot of nice things about the first Mad Max. I like the kid. I like the kid throwing the boomerang and taking that guy's head off. That was pretty awesome.
That was cool.
The chase scene at the end was stronger than any action scene in the first Mad Max. I gotta say, I saw this movie and I was tracking with it the whole time. I just didn't find it to be that compelling. I didn't find it to be that interesting. And especially compared to some of the other aspects and some of the other movies we're going to talk about, I think pretty much everything that they do in this movie is done. There's a better version of it in another Mad Max movie that we're going to talk about later. And this movie doesn't really accomplish a whole lot to me. Again, it's the end scene, the action scene with the chase at the end is better than anything in the first Mad Max. It's also not really that cool. I was never really, and they didn't do a good enough job of really imposing that the big strong guy in the mask was someone I should be afraid of, especially because he kind of went down like a bitch in the third act. Yeah, I don't really have much. Honestly, the biggest thing about it is that I don't really have a lot else to say. Like, they killed the dog again in this movie. Totally uncalled for. There's more Saw stuff. Yeah, I don't have a ton to say about it, which is probably why it's in fourth place. It doesn't really stick in my memory that much.
I think you're discounting the fact that this kind of launched the, car chase scenes, It's different because we're watching it now. If we had seen it in 1979 or in the 1980s, I think we'd be talking about it a little bit different. Even though your opinions suck, you got to keep that in mind.
I suppose, yeah. And this is, again, you got to remember, this is not super. And when you get, like, this isn't super my genre, I'm not always going to be really into, like, straight up action movies. We talked about John Wick earlier. I like the John Wick movies, but for people who love action movies, then
I love action movies.
He's going to have those movies really up here, and I respect them, and I like them, and I'm happy to watch those. A lot more than these movies. But I'm never going to connect with them as much because it's not really my genre. I'm much more of a character person, which is, again, what lends itself to the next three that I'm going to talk about.
For me, I think if you have a good story, I think if you have unbelievable action, just a good story, not even a great story, just a good story, something to follow along, it's going to be a good movie, But number three on my list, it's crazy, Mad Max 2. I thought that the end car chase scene, again, will pave the way for any other car chase scene I have seen. You talk about James Bond, you talk about those scenes, the opening scene of James Bond, like, I don't think they could have done that without Mad Max 2.
I've seen like 5 James Bond movies. I've seen a lot of James Bond
uncultured swine.
I've seen like five James Bond movies.
But no, I think that it kept me on the edge of my seat. Most of these I was kind of not half watching them, but I wasn't really fully invested. But this one, I was kind of, once I was on the edge of my seat, I was like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. And we'll talk about it later. That Fury Road and Furiosa did the same thing. We'll talk about it later on. But especially Mad Max 2, the end scene, I think it was good building up the story. We weren't really in an apocalyptic world, but in the second one, we're like, okay, this is like serious now. We're going to meet different people. We're going to see people that we can't associate with because that's never happened, like people with assless chaps. Like, if you've been in Vegas, you might be able to associate, but I've never been to Vegas, so I can't associate. But
assless chaps the other week.
No,
Oh, can I not talk about that?
no.
Okay, fine.
But no, I think that last scene and the action in this movie was the best action out of the original trilogy. And that's why I have it ahead. I think the story was really cool. I think it was a classic, unknown hero, not needing to fight, but fight because of circumstance, you know? And I think that paved the way for a lot of movies that we've seen later on, because this is 1982, 83. I forgot what it is, but that's why I have Mad Max 2. I think it has the best story out of the original three and the best action. It's not better than Furiosa, but
Yeah.
out of the original trilogy, I think it's the best story, best action.
Yeah, so me and Ben both have the original trilogy at our bottom three. At three, I have Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. And the thing is, part of the reason that is that, listen, I was born in 2001. I'm used to the modern effects going way back like this, especially when I haven't seen these movies when I was a kid. It's hard for me. Like, I've seen the Star Wars movies when I was a kid, so they're kind of ingrained in my skull. I've seen Back to the Future, Die Hard, Indiana Jones. All those movies' effects are like all a part of me already in my formative years. Going back now as a 23-year-old and watching these 80s and 70s movies sometimes that I haven't seen is a little rough for me. Beyond Thunderdome, I have it in third because I was actually solidly tracking with the movie and reasonably enjoying myself for the first 40 to 50 minutes. When Mad Max is going in and he's learning what he has to do, he's figuring out how to attack the guy they want him to get rid of, so they'll give him stuff. It's good. There's also a certain like childishness in me that appeals to the like Thunderdome and two people walking battling and the whole crowd chanting 2 men enter, 1 man leave, and I'm like, okay, I can get fired up for this. That's a really good sequence, and that's probably the best action for me in the first three is those two battling it out. And then I actually messaged a friend of mine about this movie, and he said it feels very Return of the Jedi to me, and I can kind of see that. Of like, especially in the second half, going somewhere with a cute little group that sees you as like this almost godlike figure that's going to lead them somewhere, and then they have to go and heist the people. And by the way, they just bust into Bartertown and take whatever they want, and get out of there. It's pretty insane, but yeah, like Ben said, there's a lot of silly shit in this movie, and I don't want to say that's why it's in third because it's not.
I think if it's stuck with, the Gladiator type tone the entire movie, this would be in third for
like
me.
If they locked him up or something and he had wet find with a bust out, that would have been awesome. I think
if that, I just.
Or even have the kids or that guy who was like talking about he's a new guy. I don't give a shit.
It was just silly.
They had the pieces there for a better movie. And again, if it had all those things, would it have been high on the list? Probably not. Furiosa and Fury Road are very comfortably clear of these movies. Me, it would have been. I don't think I would have put it above those two movies, but I would have gotten more enjoyment out of the movie.
For a 1980s film, it would have been good. Refreshing.
Yeah, and like Ben said, there's a lot of silly shit in there. Like there's like this town is run on pig shit, and the pig shit is controlled by Freak the Mighty, and they want to like take out Freak the Mighty's special needs, like freaking Make-A-Wish got Superman.
It's
like Lenny from Mice and Men,
and half a foot short.
Yeah, like Lenny from Of Mice and Men is the reason that this guy, and they need to put a hit on him.
Yeah,
and also if you can like jump into the middle of the ring after the whole crowd chanting 2 men enter, 1 man leave, and be like, bust a deal. Face the wheel. If you have that much control over the crowd, you didn't need him in the first place. You could have just wrecked that guy and say that he fucked up a deal and make him face the wheel and get out.
It also, I know they needed to kind of, build, until he can use the whistle or whatever he had.
Yeah.
But I'm just like, dude, you have to whistle. Stop getting your ass kicked.
Yeah.
Just blow the damn whistle.
Blow the whistle. We've tested this. We knew what it was the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a silly, silly movie. But it's fine. I mean, again, of the three, it's on third for me. Like, if I had to choose one to rewatch, I'd rewatch this one. Even though it's longer than the other two, I have a reasonably good time with the first 40 and 50 minutes when he's kind of just going into town doing his thing.
If I had to choose one to rewatch, Mad Max 2, 100%.
Okay.
100%.
Well, let's get to the good stuff.
Number 410.
These two, I think me and Ben would both give we solidly enjoyed these movies at the minimum.
I watched Furiosa twice, and I would probably am going to watch Furiosa at some point again in the future. because they were both good.
So what do you have it to?
Number 2, Furiosa. Furiosa. You know, it. I'll get into Fury Road later. It's kind of hand in hand. Furiosa is just, you know, is right there with Fury Road. The only thing I have is when I had to nitpick because they're both great movies. I saw Furiosa again, not just because of, you know, the podcast I wanted to freshen up, because I genuinely wanted to see it again because it was a damn good movie, you know. But I had to think about the movie itself, you know. And Furiosa is very much a backstory, you know, more than a movie. And I had to start nitpicking, you know. And a good example I think I can say is when you look at superhero origin stories, very few of them are, when you look at the superhero movies, very few of them, the origin story is number one. You know, you look at Captain America, you look at Thor, you know, Iron Man's an exception. Hulk was terrible. I mean,
Iron Man is more of like the other two movies weren't very good.
Exactly. But you look at like, hey, this is an origin story, just so you know. Now we get to the good stuff, you know? Fury Road was very much, hey, this isn't even a Mad Max movie. This is just an apocalyptic movie. And I think that's what's different. It's a movie. We didn't even hear his name until the end of the movie, you know? It's not a Mad Max movie. It is separate, you know? And it was Furiosa. It was Max. It was, what's his name? The white guy. The white guy with the oxygen tank. Extra white.
Oh, Immortan Joe?
Immortan Joe. It's an Immortan Joe movie. It's a Mad Max movie. It's a Furiosa movie. It's a movie about an apocalypse. It's a little bit of everything, you know? And there's not really, you know, people versus people, you know? It's more of, hey, a couple of people are fighting for what's right, and we're going to see if people rally behind, you know? And that's the problem I had with Furiosa. It was very much, hey, it's you know, side versus side. And we've seen that a lot, you know. Mad Max, I mean, Fury Road was very original. I've never seen a movie like that, you know. I couldn't tell you what was about to happen. I could guess, but I couldn't tell you what was about to happen, you know. Yeah. That's why I like
even in a story that's pretty simple.
It's very simple.
Yeah, not a ton happens.
But I was like, I don't know if Immortan Joe's going to die or if they're going to hold a prisoner.
Yeah.
You know, Furiosa, obviously you knew what was going to happen because you knew Fury Road, but it's kind of, you were like, I mean, it's good, but you're kind of like, okay, she's going to get her revenge one way or the other. Yeah. I just don't know how it's going to be, you know? And that it was a lot more predictable. I didn't nitpick because they're both good movies, but yeah. I like Fury Road as a movie better, even though I think Furiosa as a story is a better story. But I think as a movie, Fury Road was better than Furiosa.
Yeah. I also have Furiosa at 2. I think I don't agree with the origin story thing. I like origin stories.
I do too.
We have a lot of fights in Spider-Man, but on our Spider-Man rankings, 2002 original Sam Raimi Spider-Man is much higher on my list than Ben would like it to be.
Yeah, but at the same time, number 2 is your best one, right?
So Furiosa. Furiosa is a really, really strong movie, and I like Anya Taylor-Joy and I like Chris Hemsworth. I think they work really well, and it's much more of a traditional action movie in that we've got our main villain, Chris Hemsworth, who does something terrible to our lead character, in this case more than once, and eventually the whole movie's kind of building to we want to see that main guy get killed, and it does a lot of things. Another thing that brings Fury Road so high up is that this movie does a lot of work to make that movie even better by kind of fleshing out who Furiosa is. Why does she want to do so much to help the wives? Well, because she kind of almost became a wife, and she almost got in a really dicey situation because of that, and she probably doesn't want anyone else to have to deal with that. I like that it kind of has a linear line for how her life is. She got taken, and her whole life is trying to get back. And who she becomes along the way is kind of incidental. It's like this is what I have to do to get back. I kind of have to climb this ladder. I have to do the freaking X-Force symbol to get back to where I need to be, pretend to be mute. You get a lot of this is kind of cool that you get a little girl power moment in there that doesn't feel cheap and doesn't feel like someone's pandering, because you get your guy and her mask flies off and you see her hair and he's like, oh shit, she's a girl, what the fuck? And then she starts taking guys out, and clearly she's inexperienced and also a kid. And he doesn't, but he looks at her and he says, listen, girl, but can defend herself and originally can be useful to me. And then clearly many years later, they grow very attached to each other, which also leads us to be that much angrier when Chris Hemsworth kills that guy in that way. This also does a good job of building out the idea of the wasteland a little bit, of some of the politics of what goes on, where Chris Hemsworth pulls up and is like, what's up? I'm taking this, gets sent away, takes over Gastown, is trying to make place to take over Bullet Town, and there's infighting going on. That didn't really exist in Fury Road. Fury Road's much more of an action after action after action. We're just moving. It's very fast paced, and this is much more about character and much more about the world that we're in. It's a much bigger story than any of the other Mad Max movies. We're going really all over the place here.
I think it speaks a lot in volume, and I do agree with you that like Furiosa is such a good movie that it makes Fury Road that much better because it explains so much that to keep a good movie, and again, Fury Road was nominated for Best Picture, like for a reason, you know, Best Director. But to keep a good movie, you couldn't include that, you know?
Yeah.
But Furiosa just makes Fury Road that much better.
Really,
you know?
yeah. And it's trying to. And it doesn't. It's not ashamed of that.
Yeah.
The thing that like kind of knocks it down for me is that it's kind of my issue with the whole Mad Max movies, and Fury Road does kind of the best job of dealing with this, I think, is that Chris Hemsworth's whole speech at the end of like, we're already dead. We're just trying to enact our will onto other people to feel alive again. It's kind of my issue with the whole Mad Max like saga, especially because we follow such broken down characters. In this wasteland where nothing really grows, you have to kind of dig your own bullets out. You have to frack for gasoline. You have to drill water from like the core of the earth. I don't know why it's hard to find compelling stories to tell, and it's hard to like imagine a reason why you would even want to go on living, especially when the characters that we're following, like Furiosa, finds someone she likes, dies. The only meaning she can find is making Chris Hemsworth into a fucking tree. And then what happens? Like, it's hard to feel the victory when you don't feel like you've really won anything.
I think, I mean, you could argue that's a metaphor of a lot of people's lives, you know? They don't feel like, you know, they have a big purpose. What is the point, you know? But survival is survival, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
you're alive,
You're going to survive, you know? And that's just human nature.
Yeah.
You know?
And of course you can't follow like a more sympathetic, compassionate character because they're dead. They didn't make it.
Exactly. I did make a note that I thought it was funny. I said Furiosa is the unluckiest and luckiest person in the Mad Max saga.
Yeah.
You know?
That's the thing.
She gets so unlucky,
yeah.
But at the same time, the breaks that she gets kind of propels her to get revenge, you know?
Yeah.
But it's I thought both movies were great.
But you had Fury Road at 1.
I do have Fury Road at 1. I mean, it's just I love Tom Hardy so much, and he's not even the star of the movie. You know, that's how good he is.
Yeah.
But he's not even the main character, even though he is. You know, big problem. The only problem I had, and that's we're talking about an over 2-hour movie, and I only have one real problem, is they didn't really explain his backstory. I was like, okay,
yeah,
it's called Mad Max. Like, can we learn about Max? You know? But, I mean, maybe they'll come out with a prequel, Mad Max prequel.
Maybe. I'd love to see.
I wouldn't mind Tom.
That's a movie I would like.
Tom Hardy's been in. I've loved him in it. You know, I just thought that the movie is just perfect flowing. I thought Morton Joe was scary, even though I will say, I love Chris Hemsworth as a villain. His performance was great.
Evil.
He was so like, I was like, you monster! Like he was giving me chills, you know. And that was the first villain role he's ever been in, you know, really ever been in. I was Netflix movie I watched. He was terrible though. And he was the villain technically.
Was it Spider or something?
Something like that. He was terrible. Anyway,
that's not a good movie. No.
Not a good movie, but he's such a good villain, and I think it's good that it was an Australian movie. He didn't have to do an accent, didn't have to be anybody, just be your crazy side, you know. Yeah. And but
sick and twisted.
Immortan Joe is, I think that Immortan Joe is a perfect character in Mad Max because there's not really. Like Chris Hemsworth is a villain in Mad Max because something is wrong with him. He is just crazy. You know, that's what it is explained. And he is great and he does that role great. But there is a problem because there's, you know, psychopath people. There's not really, normal people don't follow. Like thousands and thousands of people aren't really following crazy person like that and getting behind that person in the real world. That's a big problem. Even though Chris Hemsworth is great, that is a big problem. You know, now there are some crazy people, but like we're talking about like a gigantic cult. You know, there's cults and there's people who follow crazy people, but not like thousands and thousands of people. You know, it's just unrealistic.
And you find that out in Furiosa.
Yeah, but
he says, "What's up?"
Exactly, but Immortan Joe's a perfect, you know, villain because it's not like he is just like pure evil. He's like, I have to run this way so people don't leave and people follow and get in line. And I think the Furiosa explained that really well because he started to lose his people. You know, was it? I know he said little D. What's his name? Something with a D.
Oh, Dementus?
Dementus.
Yeah.
I know that he started losing his people because, like, Dementus started losing his people because of how he was running it, you know? And I think that's what makes Immortan Joe, again, that's what makes Furiosa makes Fury Road that much better because it explains, there's a reason why Immortan Joe runs it the way he does and barely gives any water because...
And probably shows where Furiosa got the idea for making sure the Citadel was empty. It was because he's like, we can't leave, he'll come because it's what Dementus tried to do.
Exactly. So it, I thought that Immortan Joe was a perfect villain because, I mean, you took his most valuable thing, and it's not power. And that's why I think they made Immortan Joe such a good villain.
Yeah.
His most valuable thing is his heritage.
Yeah.
So when you take his wives and any chance he has on getting sons and getting more sons, that's when it becomes a problem. And that's like the most precious thing he has, you know? That's a lot of people's most precious thing, you know? So Immortan Joe was very realistic as a villain. The lies were very realistic just because, like, hey, we want to be free. We want to live. Yeah. We don't want to be trapped, you know? Furiosa as a character was very realistic, especially because Furiosa's movie we learned.
Yeah.
And then Mad Max, I mean, you know, Max was realistic because, I mean, he's lost so much and he's like, hey, I want to help them out. We don't really know what he's lost because we haven't seen the damn movie. And I really hope they make a movie because I love Tom Hardy and these two Mad Max movies are great. But we know he's lost family and people important to him.
Yeah.
And he wants to help people who are important to other people, you know? So everything about that is realistic. And, I mean, even the War Boys, you know, being not a cult, but being a religion, like, hey, this is my purpose, this is my duty.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm going to be in Valhalla if I, you know, sacrifice my life for something glorious, you know?
Yeah,
so it's just
witness me.
Yeah, everything in that movie was damn.
A few times when they did that, like it just sends chills down your spine.
And it was like a lot more in Fury Road than in Furiosa. There's a couple times where I'm like the little person War Boy, the way he died. I'm like, okay, you didn't need to make him die, but I feel sad, but like, come on, you know, when you look at the deaths in Fury Road for the War Boys. They're either funny or, you know, really, really cool scenes, you know?
Yeah.
So it just, almost everything in Fury Road was perfect, and that's, I mean, just a perfect movie,
it's great.
That's why I had it first.
I had it first. I thought about it and I was like, listen, Furiosa, it's similar to Mad Max 1 and 2 for me in that Furiosa is like a full story, but I don't really have issues with the Fury Road story, really.
Yeah.
Because it's pretty simple.
It's
and
just simple,
car goes one way, makes a U-turn, comes back. And also, again, moments. It's got lots of really good moments. You talk about Tom Hardy. I love Tom Hardy.
Oh, yeah.
And I actually prefer Tom Hardy as Max to Mel Gibson as Max.
I do.
I buy that style of very like knee-jerk type movements, and you can very clearly see him as like the guy who's been hardened by the desert and the wasteland, but also when put in this kind of situation with people around him, there's obviously a softness to him that comes out and a compassion where he's clearly volatile and clearly very powerful and explosive and this fighter, but also doesn't mean to harm people and only seeks for himself at the time and is tortured by the memories of the people that he's lost. And this is a movie in terms of also Charlize Theron as Furiosa. I like Anya Taylor-Joy a lot, and I think she's a much better actress. But I actually prefer Charlize Theron's performance as Furiosa because I buy her much more as, again, this hardened person who can battle it out. And then you have this like where she rugby tackles Tom Hardy, and you can see this like, we gotta get the fuck out of here. Yeah. And part of that's not the direction. But I also do buy her as that character of this person who's like, I'm gonna go here. And I talked about earlier with the Wasteland, like, why would you even try? For the green place, right? Yeah. And when you go to it, and then you see how it just breaks her to see that it's not there anymore. The action, this movie gets better as it goes along. It starts a little slow. It takes a second to get going, but once it's going, it's good. It like really picks up, and the action gets better and better and better. And that third act, where they're really just trying to battle to get in that Citadel, is crazy good. And especially for a movie that is clearly about trying to do right by your past wrongs, Furiosa in rising to that rank probably had to throw a lot of people under the bus. You can even see her in the Furiosa movie. Like, that guy had to fall off that card for her to get that promotion.
Yeah.
Max clearly wasn't able to save certain people he wanted to, but for me, the strongest moment of the entire movie is that war boy, who is like this castaway on the war rig. And 2 times, I think, before this, he like sprays himself in the mouth, or Mortinger sprays him and yells, "Witness me!" And he goes to do it. And when the war boys do that, it's not what you would call a selfless act. It's very much an act of ego. Everyone look at me. I'm going to die in this giant spectacle, and then I'll see all of you in Valhalla. At this moment in the end where he's driving back and he's let everyone go ahead and he's back on the war rig and watching them get away, and he's going to catch up with them, he gets put into a pickle where he can't get away and they're going to get caught. And he looks at them and he goes, "Witness me," in a way that's totally different, because he's probably put together, there might not be a Valhalla to go to. This might be the end of me. And it's almost like something he's saying to comfort himself, and that he's like, they're looking at me, they see me, and they know that I'm doing this out of love for them so that they might see it better tomorrow. It's a really very strong moment for me.
Oh yeah.
And it's good. It's a full story. You get all the way there, you come all the way back, you find some kind of prosperity, and maybe there will always be war, as Furiosa says. Maybe there'll be a battle in the future, but they've secured some kind of equity. I certainly trust Max and Furiosa to give much more of a fair shake to these people than Immortan Joe.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I don't really have a ton of issues. I mean, I guess you could say when we get to like Furiosa's family, that those people really show up. They add to the movie, they do, but one of their primary purposes is to kind of add to the movie's body count. Also, the movie earns its moments. It has good moments, but it totally earns them, and you're not thinking about it.
Yeah.
Like, I thought about it when Furiosa was asking Max, she was like, "What's your name?" And he's like looking at her and doesn't want to tell her, and I'm like, at some point he'll say it. But I forgot in the course of the movie, and when Furiosa's dying, he goes, "My name's Max. My name's Max." And I'm like, I didn't expect it. I wasn't thinking about it, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, she's dying. He's again trying to find a way to comfort her, trying to bring her back, and doesn't want to lose someone else that he's, in spite of himself, come to really care about. And yeah, also killing Immortan Joe like that, pulling people out. And again, solid action movie stuff. Not as traditional as Furiosa in that like bad guy we want to see dead, but like this guy hoards women in a room and forces them to bear all his children. Doesn't really endear you to
Yeah.
Immortan Joe as a person.
Also at the same time, it's like, you could see him as he is human, because he cares about them for the wrong reasons. He cares about his wives,
Yeah.
for the sole point of having sons and breast milk. But but he does care about him, so it's kind of like
Yeah.
he is human. It's just for the wrong reasons. That's why I thought Furiosa is going to be like the sum up. I thought Furiosa had a better story and had a lot better characters and cooler characters and scarier characters.
And more built out characters.
Mhm.
Got more time for their development.
Exactly, but Fury Road is just a better movie.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing Fury Road has going for it is that it's got a fantastic score.
Yeah.
Like you get fired up for these action sequences.
Oh,
like
yeah.
the drums kick in, like when
The
they're in
guitar, flaming guitar fire.
Dude. Or like when they're
Yeah.
flying through the the canyon,
Yeah.
do things on either side, and you see them showing up, and the beat kicks in. And you're like, oh,
Yeah.
here we go.
Yeah.
Here, and it's also action from start to finish. Like there's always something happening. There's always something going on. It's just a really, really strong movie. Even though it's not really as I said, my thing. I think as much as I was like debating it in my head, I find it very hard to believe if we do this again that I'll have anything that's not Fury.
Exactly. It was, for me, I love action. I love a good action movie and story. Just, if you have great action and a good story, it's going to be a good movie for me,
Yeah.
And all the other movies, I was kind of able to be distracted, with the exception of Furious. I'm talking about the first three. But Fury Road, especially, I didn't see in the movie theater, but I didn't pause it.
I wish I had.
I wish I did. I didn't pause it. I didn't look at anything else. I was completely tuned in the movie. Furiosa might have been different, but it was still, I did see it in movie theaters. I was still completely, looking at Furiosa and nothing else. Like I was like, okay, this movie, I'm gonna pay attention. I'm gonna be tuned in, So I mean, they're both great, but Fury Road was just like, action movies need to watch Fury Road. There's specific movies you need to watch if you want to make a good action movie. And I think Fury Road, especially any apocalyptic movie, you need to look at Fury Road because that was perfect,
Yeah. So at 5, I had Mad Max 1. At 4, I had Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior. At 3, I had Ben's favorite movie, Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome.
I'm gonna kill you.
At 2, I had Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, and at 1, of course, I had Mad Max Fury Road.
All right, now the actual good list. I had
Wow,
Mad Max 3.
Great
I had
movie.
Mad Max. I had Mad Max 2. Trilogy bottom 3, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Furiosa at number 2. And then Fury Road number 1.
Yeah.
But obviously, I think everybody should watch all of them because there are good parts in every single movie. Just don't get your hopes up for the original 3.
Yeah. It's kind of like when you're watching a TV show and someone's like, you kind of got to get through the first few seasons before before you get into it. Like, I think everyone's heard that. But
Exactly.
I guess you could just watch Fury Road and Furiosa.
You could.
But there's the interesting things to be had by watching the first.
If you want to look at, The Gladiator got a lot of what it does from Mad Max 3.
Yeah.
There's easily some scenes where I'm like, oh, that's literally The Gladiator.
Yeah.
Mad Max 2, there's like a dozen James Bond car chase scenes in the open, which he hasn't seen because
I've seen so many James Bond.
He's an attractive man who just doesn't watch movies.
I watch so many movies.
But if you watch...
I watched so many movies that started a podcast.
If you watch the James Bond car chase scenes, you'll be like, okay, I can see some, similarities and in Mad Max and Mad Max 2. So they're definitely worth watching, at least some scenes. And then if you haven't seen Fury Road or Furiosa, you're missing out. Like, it's great,
They're good. Yeah.
I don't know why Furious is flopping at the box office. because it's almost on the same level as Fury Road.
It's good.
It's just different, you know. It's an origin story rather than just a standalone movie, you know. It's an origin story, but Furious, I don't know why it's flopping. I mean, if you're above 80% on Rotten Tomatoes, you're a good movie, you know.
Yeah.
Furious is 88%, and
You probably won't be bored.
You won't be, you know. I don't understand why it's flopping, but it's a great movie. It's worth the watch.
So that's our Mad Max ranking. What are we doing next time we're here, Ben?
Oh, we got something special. We got the boys. This guy's got to get through. He's already got through season 1.
Mm-hmm.
So season 1, season 2, season 3.
I've gotten through season 2 as well.
Season 1, season 2. So he's got season 3 and Gen V.
Yeah.
And then June 13th is the big day.
Yeah.
And that is the boys season 4. So
I think what we'll do is we'll make 2 videos. We'll make one where we're talking about seasons 1, 2, 3, and Gen V. And we'll work through them in that order.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll both watch through season 4. And then we'll come back. We'll give our review for season 4, and we'll do a ranking.
I think that I'm gonna do what I expect, what I want.
Yeah,
and,
that's true.
And what I hope. You know, I think if we do those 3,
and we got a lot to talk about. There's
4 seasons of great television.
It's a dense show. There's so many little pieces. There's so many interesting characters, and the show likes to comment on a lot of things. So we'll be able to really get in. We might go. We got 30 hours a month of recording from Riverside. We're gonna test that for how much we can use, because we might talk for a while. We're gonna make some real work.
It's The Boys is a great show, so I'm looking forward to that.
We also have in our back pocket. We're gonna talk about Bad Boys.
Yeah,
we want to make a Bad Boys ranking.
That might actually be the next one.
Yeah.
Because Bad Boys is currently out right now. You know.
Yeah.
So that might be the next one, but we'll see.
We're also probably going to talk about Inside Out 2 comes out. So we'll see Inside Out 1 again, and we'll watch it. And then on June 16th, House of the Dragon Season 2 comes out. Fortunately, that show is 1 week at a time for each episode. So Ben has time to catch up on Season 1. But probably around halfway through the season, we'll jump in, give our thoughts. And then in each of our podcasts after that, probably week to week, we'll give our thoughts on the newest episode. Yeah. So
I'm ready. We're down 100 before 10.
100 before 10.
Oh, yeah.
Check this out.
And we're going to get some shorts and clips, and we're going to be very attractive men.
Listen, we're fucking good looking. If anyone ever asked you, why do you listen to that podcast? What did those people have over every other movie podcast? Listen, eye candy.
If you get Rusty, you too can look like me.
Ka-chow.